Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and this is Movie Crap. This is my weekly movie news show where I talk about movie news articles and a few trailers and shit. And this was not a particularly great movie news week. This is probably going to be a shorter one, so sorry about that. I don't dictate what movie news comes out. So let's kick it off, and first off it was announced recently that there's going to be an Animaniacs reboot. And before you go screaming for the hills or anything like that, thing about that is it's super early in development. So what does that mean at this point? Sorta nothing. It doesn't really mean anything, because right now it's like in early development. None of the old voices have signed on, or at least from this report, they're just talking about it. The only thing that's interesting is that Steven Spielberg and Amblin decided to do this first, other than the Tiny Toons reboot, which I remember was their much more high profile show. Animaniacs just kind of sort of became a hit through word of mouth and stuff. Tiny Toons, I think they really wanted to be more of this at this point, but didn't work. So I'm surprised they didn't try Tiny Toons, and Tiny Toons is so unavailable also. I haven't seen it in a while too, so. But I remember Tiny Toons being fairly loved, but not as much as Animaniacs. So it's very early in development. People seem to think it could go to Netflix, but again, there's no deal in place. They're just developing it probably to gain interest and see how it would go on Twitter, and it seems to be going pretty well. I watched the State Capitol song, so, you know, it succeeded in at least me getting to think about Animaniacs again. I think that's the most the story's really doing. We'll see if it actually goes anywhere, as this is in such early development. It's kind of like, yeah, sure, we're sort of thinking about it. Someone brought it up in a meeting. Hey, let's maybe do that, sort of. That's about where this is. Director for Godzilla vs. King Kong is going to be Adam Wingard, who directed The Guest, You're Next, and recently, and unfortunately, Blair Witch. As much as I like Adam Wingard, and before Blair Witch, he was probably a director I was really excited about, especially with The Guest, I'm not really thrilled, because when he did a kind of a big studio franchise like Blair Witch, it really didn't work out. I sort of hope it's more of The Guest and less of the Blair Witch. It's an interesting choice. I know studios have really wanted to get him to do a big movie. I don't think he has as much experience doing like a weird kind of creature kind of movie, but he knows genre filmmaking well enough that this could actually work out. But the only thing that worries me is, like, you know, that Blair Witch movie. It came out this week that Lucasfilm didn't really have a plan mapped out beyond The Force Awakens, after a tweet from Rian Johnson where someone asked him, you know, what were their notes or plans that they gave him. It seemed like there was very little plans, and they're kind of open to Rian Johnson doing whatever he wanted, whether that's because he's Rian Johnson or because that's just how they operate. Who the fuck knows? That's apparently what's going on. That kind of makes sense, since both the Star Wars films that have been released under this new kind of guise with Kathleen Kennedy and everything, and not to pick on her specifically, but how they've run it, they've done a lot of reshoots, they've reorganized things. The Force Awakens changed from the original script to probably that script reading thing was a different script from what they shot, from my understanding, fairly drastically. There were times where Luke had the role that kind of Han Solo had. So it's kind of interesting in that regard, that it seems like they're a lot more flexible than most people are, but it seems to be working out for them, or at least so far. Really, the original Star Wars trilogy wasn't that planned out anyway, so that kind of makes sense, and I don't think the prequel one was either. Since this is a lighter news week, I thought I'd just bring up the Bumblebee movie, which I didn't get to talk about when I was kind of off with the baby and everything. The Transformers spinoff, and although that seems fairly uninteresting to me, Travis Knight, who directed Kubo and the Two Strings, and is actually the president of Laika, has been chosen as the director. Now, I noticed there's a lot of negative reaction to this, but basically, what does this mean, I guess? One is Laika's future is a little uncertain, because their president's kind of leaving to make a major movie, and that's kind of the bigger deal that you should be worried about, to be honest. If you were going to be worried about it, what's going to happen with Laika? Clearly, they're probably going to put someone else in charge while he's over there, or maybe they'll have them help out with the Bumblebee movie, and it'll take longer for a Laika film to come out, which is also likely as well. Put everything on hold, which happens a lot when directors run major companies like J.J. Abrams at Bad Robot and so forth. This also shows the industry has a lot of faith in him. There's not a lot of stop motion directors who get to do live action. It's like this guy and Henry Selick. It shows that the industry actually takes him very seriously in his visual style and goes, hey, he's actually incredibly talented and we want him to work on major films. So in the industry, they're taking Laika very seriously, and they're taking this guy very seriously, and that's actually a good thing. That's not a negative thing. That's a very good thing. But it's just that people didn't see Kubo. That's not Bumblebee's fault or Transformers' fault. It's very good for him opportunity-wise. It slightly makes me a little more interested in a Bumblebee movie than I otherwise wouldn't be. I don't think it's going to save this movie. It'll probably look better than most Michael Bay movies, but he's also never really done a live-action thing to my knowledge. So that can work either way. You get your Brad Birds and your Phil Lord and Chris Millers, but then you have other people who, like the guy who did Monster Trucks as an animation director doing live-action. It can really go either way. Or, you know, Andrew Stanton or something. Sometimes it doesn't entirely work out, and especially since there's no real proven track record for this other than Henry Selick and Monkey Bone, and that was something he developed. It wasn't something the studio put on him. That was a major project, a major franchise like Bumblebee is. This is a completely different thing, and I find that actually kind of interesting. I just don't really love that he's doing a Bumblebee movie, and if we had supported Kubo and the Two Strings, would he maybe be working on another stop motion movie instead of this? I don't know, because this is still a big job for a director. Transformers are a major franchise financially, and it shows a lot of faith of Paramount to do that, and it could mean he could be able to approve even bigger projects and help Laika out in the future. So it actually could work out, or it could just really hurt the whole studio and the product line, as the guy who's really been very hands-on studio head is kind of leaving to work on his own thing. That could hurt the studio as well. Who knows? But it kind of like, it's both good news and bad news. Just don't get too extreme about it, because it maybe sort of helps you, but you know, maybe in 2 years you could be like, damn it, Jim, I think they really fucked this up for a dumb Bumblebee movie, which is a definite fear you should probably have also. The trailer for Lucky Logan, which I keep thinking is Logan Lucky, but it's Lucky Logan, which is the return to the big screen of Steven Soderbergh, who retired but now is unretired and did a really great TV show called The Nick, which you should really check out. But he's back with Lucky Logan. It's a pretty cool trailer, and everybody loves the screenshot where it says, and introducing Daniel Craig, but it has Adam Driver, Channing Tatum, and Daniel Craig. And Steven Soderbergh is one of my favorite filmmakers. This is probably one of my more anticipated movies of the summer and in this year in general, and it looks like a lot of fun. Kind of reminds me a little bit of his film The Informant, which is a film I'm quite a big fan of, and I think is kind of underrated. He was always good at comedy. I don't think it's what he's known for. It's an interesting way to come back, but Soderbergh kind of always did what he wanted to do, and this kind of shows that as well. Now, I wanted to talk about box office quickly. It was a pretty bad Memorial Day, one of the worst ones actually since the 90s. There wasn't really, I kind of feel like this weekend was kind of more of the disappointing summer we had last summer. I don't think the rest of the summer is going to be entirely like this. Pirates of the Caribbean made about $78 million. It's still going to make most of its money overseas, but it did better than I think most people thought. That's of the 4-day, not the 3-day. And Baywatch actually did worse than Guardians of the Galaxy in its 4th week. There are several people who I could see Guardians of the Galaxy 2 again, or I could see Baywatch, and they were like, fuck Baywatch. And Baywatch did fairly poorly despite opening a day early. Made about $27 million by Memorial Day, $23 million 4-day. Didn't do particularly well. It feels like box office wise we're all kind of waiting to see what Wonder Woman does. I think the interesting thing about Wonder Woman is how box office predictions happen is box office predictions are based on movies that are similar. So if Guardians of the Galaxy 2, we base it on other Marvel movies. We base it on how the first film did, how other sequels did, based on surprise hits, things of that nature. Wonder Woman is sort of in a class by itself because first off, there aren't that many female superhero movies, and that's part of it, but also because Wonder Woman's kind of one of the 4 superheroes that kind of everyone knows. That's Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and Wonder Woman. Like, everybody universally knows them. Before there were big superhero movies, everyone knew those 4 characters. And the other 3 have had movies for a while now. You know, we're getting the 5th Spider-Man movie with countless Superman and Batman movies. And Wonder Woman, even if you count like Batman v Superman, has never really headlined a movie before, and until recently never really even been on the big screen. So there's going to be a lot of anticipation, people coming to the theater who don't normally. And box office predictions can't really work past a certain point. Once you get past the $100 million mark, it's even fairly inaccurate to really analyze how it's going to go, because then you're going in territory very few movies get to. A lot of people say, oh, it'll be like the first Thor movie, but like Wonder Woman, I feel like for a lot of women who don't usually see superhero movies or even anticipate seeing superhero movies or seeing superhero movies with groups of people, so that could really affect how this movie goes down. To be honest, I think any prediction is going to be widely inaccurate because no one really knows, because it's too much of an outlier. The only thing you could really compare it to is the first Spider-Man movie, and that was 2002, because that's a big anticipated film that people since they're little kids were like, when are they going to make this movie? And Wonder Woman has that. Lots of IP, as they call it in Hollywood, and lots of big name studio franchises wish they had something like this where people are like, holy shit, it's on the big screen, I have to see it. And Wonder Woman has that more than any other movie this summer, more than Spider-Man being part of the MCU. That doesn't matter as much as this. So I think you're going to see a very different box office take with this. I would say any prediction is probably going to be off because there's no way to kind of test it, especially with the DCU. I mean, some of it can work in her favor. It's the first Wonder Woman movie, but it's also in the DCEU, and that wasn't fairly well received, but she was probably the most well received part of the DCEU so far, not going into the reviews of Wonder Woman. And the reviews are good, which actually helps box office, particularly in the summer. Thus why they let movies that are better in the summer release their reviews early, so you can talk at work all week about how you want to see that with friends and such. There's a lot riding going for this movie, probably more than most summer movies this season, so I actually expect a decent opening. But I don't think anyone actually knows what that opening is going to be, because there's no way you honestly could. It might be a superhero movie and that might not seem as unique, but in a box office perspective, it's going to be a very unique, different kind of a thing, and I don't think anyone knows exactly how much it's going to make. I'm very interested to see how this is going to do. Apparently there is a new cut of Spider-Man 3 that was released on Amazon for 24 hours this past weekend. They're apparently going to re-release the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy in new HD and all that, and they're going to release a new cut of Spider-Man 3, a different an editor's cut, I believe, which I don't know what cut wouldn't be an editor's cut, but whatever. Apparently it cuts out a few things and puts in a new sequence and things. I don't know if there's any way you could really save Spider-Man 3. I've gone down that dark road of thinking there's ways you could save Spider-Man 3, and I've long realized that there is no way you could have saved that fucking movie. But there was a new cut. It appeared for 24 hours. We do not know when it's going to come back. I assume they'll probably give it a decent release, or you can scour the internet somewhere. I'm sure it maybe is released, although I'm not condoning you do that. I'm just saying, you know, it was released for 24 hours and it's super rare, so I'm sure no one wants to find it now. Feels like at least Sony's like, oh, let's try to recut this and make this good, and then they recut it and go, oh, there's no way. It will never be saved. David Lynch has been making a ton of interviews, and there's like statements and quotes from him going up all the time right now, some of which are interesting, others of which are kind of like when the cool guy at school makes a joke that someone already made 40 times and everyone laughs at it and acts like it's really genius. The David Lynch on movie trailers is like one of those. It's like, yeah, movie trailers suck right now because they give away everything. He frames it in a nice way, but it's not as incredible as everyone's posting it about. But he has said originally he was saying he was going to give up cinema and not make movies anymore, and he has kind of walked back on that and says he isn't giving up. It sounded like if he had the idea for a movie, he would make it, which is like, okay, that's cool. Kind of seemed like he wasn't really interested. There was no projects that like didn't get made or anything, to my understanding of his. He has not fully given up, probably because he's had a lot more heat on him since the Twin Peaks reboot has happened. So there's a possibility that there could be a new movie from him at some point if he comes up with the idea, I guess. On Twitter, Edgar Wright started a kind of joke Twitter thing with various major directors and even The Rock of a Simon and Garfunkel naming movie cinematic universe, and even got The Rock involved for the song I Am the Rock, which is pretty funny. Or I Am a Rock. I am a rock. That's it. I am a rock. And it was kind of a funny little back and forth, and even got like published in Variety and things like that. And I think everyone involved was very happy with themselves, and I thought it was actually kind of funny. Paul Schrader reviewed Song to Song in a Facebook status, and before you're like, why would I care about this movie that came and gone from theaters, and I have shot a review of it, I just haven't gotten a chance to edit it. But Paul Schrader beat me to it, I guess, and frankly I think Paul Schrader did a better review. It's quite funny. I don't know why Paul Schrader's not on Twitter. Paul Schrader's review of Song to Song is that if you could photograph the unwanted urine which dribbles from an old man's penis, you would have a film titled Song to Song, which, you know, is fairly accurate. So check it out, that movie, if you want to. The Oats Volume 1 trailer, which is a trailer for a series of shorts that Neil Blomkamp did, and Sigourney Weaver's in it, and there's aliens and stuff, and I think it's a series of short films that are going to be online or something, I forget. Seem cool enough, and if you want to check that out, it's the Odes Volume 1 trailer. Links are in the description down below. Jamie Foxx did an impression of Tarantino and how he works on the Howard Stern show. It's actually pretty funny. Don't just read the quote, watch the video. Jamie Foxx has a pretty good impression of how Tarantino directed him, and even said he loved working on the film so much he'd work with him a million times more. So, you know, it's all in jest, I guess. That's sort of it for Movie Crap. It was a light week. Sorry about that. I hope you enjoyed the few stories we have here and stuff. Check out the videos I've made so far this week. Of course, I had an old review omnibus, a Mystery Science Theater 3000 review for The Land That Time Forgot, which is the episode my name's in the credits for, and a review of Jim Kata, as well as I did a voice for a Bedhead Bernie video about the Emoji Movie. Check out all of those if you can. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below in the comments if you'd like to talk about any of the stories I talked about, and of course links are in the description, and subscribe if you would like to.